When we ask people, what is your relationship with your church and what do you feel about these certain things, 20% feel valued at their church, 21% feel included, 22% feel at home, and 23% feel connected to others. If you look at it from the opposite side, that's 77 to 89% of people do not feel these things at their church. And then when you look at the statistics as to practicing Christians and what's happening to them and how that's decreasing and the non-believers are increasing, something is obviously happening.
What did that information lead your organization to do?
The way we used to build churches over the last 30 years, it's changed. And the fact that Millennials and Gen Zs are now the largest population and what they're looking for has changed. So all of this is shaping what we must do, and in our designs to go, what we've been doing isn't working anymore, and the data shows that. What's coming out of a lot of this research is the fact that people are looking for...
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Between the Lanes, and super excited that you've joined us. I just want to say welcome. If you've been with us through our podcast journey, welcome back. If this is your first time and you're just tuning in, we have a podcast here called Between the Lanes, and normally that is between me and my father, Tom Lane, and it's Between the Lanes, and we have guests that we dialogue between us at times. Today, it's sort of a single lane. It's like the express lane on the highway, and I am going to take this one today with a couple of guests who are some good friends of mine, and we're going to have a great conversation. But I want to tell you that our podcast, Between the Lanes, is made possible by the Executive Leadership Institute, ELI. You can find us at executiveleaders.com, and we help leaders navigate their leadership journey without losing their life. And so that's there's a tagline of interest to you to dive into executiveleaders.com. We'll love to tell you more about that. But today I'm excited because I got some two friends that I want to introduce you to, and we're going to have a fun conversation I think you'll enjoy. Our topic is trust, building trust, rebuilding trust. And we're coming at it from some different angles. So we have with us Mike Fultinsky and John Anthony. And I've worked with these guys for years. Mike and I directly working together for many, many years. And John as a friend and a colleague in his field. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what they do. But we started meeting together about a year ago with the idea of all that we do in our different worlds, and again, we'll talk about that, help build culture. And it's really different angles that we come at in building culture. And we thought there's probably an interesting conversation that we could have around this. And so I'm gonna with that sort of setup, let me go to you, Mike, and just say, Mike, talk about what you do today. Talk about your company. Talk for a second about your kind of your heart and your passion for what we're going to end up talking about, but how it involves what you do today.
Well, I'd like to start by saying that we've been talking about for about a year now to try to figure out how we can create something that will help the church from the place that it's been to where it is today. And we're a year into it, and we're still trying to figure it out. So exactly. I think that the reality is we may be doing that for quite some time, and things are changing around us every single day. But for me, I'm currently with Aspen Group. As you said prior to that, you and I used to spend some time working together. So collectively, I've been in the church world now for 15 years, 6 of those years at an operational level, overseeing finances and operations. And currently with Aspen, I'm the Vice President of Operations. We are a design build firm, so we specifically design and build churches. That's the niche environment that we are in. Some people say, well, what is a design build firm? So I like to just let them know that we are an architectural firm and a general contractor firm, and you combine those two things together, and that's what we end up doing. So it's a turnkey approach from beginning to end. We try to design it, build it, furnish it, remove that ownership off of the owner so that way they can continue to do ministry. We've been around for over 30 years, so we've built hundreds and hundreds of churches. We have an understanding of what it requires to design a building for church services versus just a church building for office space or some other type. And you have a lot of different talented architects in the world, but we see frequently that when you're designing church space, it feels and looks very differently and operates differently than a traditional space. When you have hundreds to thousands of people trying to leave the room at the same time while you're trying to get the next hundreds of thousands to try to fill that room.
It's a unique challenge for sure.
There's a unique challenge.
Yeah.
So, but if you guys remember, I just had a burden for the three of us to come together. We found ourselves in a unique time in our lives. We were making some changes in the companies and the firms that we were with. We were building something together. And I just thought, what a unique opportunity to have three different perspectives talking about the church world, the church culture. And one of you came up with a cool name for us, the Church Culture Alliance. Might have been you. So I've really enjoyed getting to know you guys better. Obviously, I've worked with you, but getting to know you better and seeing where we are today.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, again, Mike and I have worked together for a long, long time. And in our work together, I've seen Mike excel at a high level in finance and operations, building design, and really be a visionary in that regard. So I'm excited for what you're doing today, and excited really for your passion about how to create environments, an atmosphere and spaces that are conducive for God to do His work, and it's part of what we're going to talk about. So this will be fun. John is an attorney. He's an elder at his church. He's a faithful man of God, and so talk about your firm. Talk about your passion in this area.
Yeah. So, I've worked with faith-based nonprofits, churches, ministries, organizations, small family business for the last about 14 years. And it has been an absolute passion of mine during that entire time to affect culture. And, whether it's work, because when lawyers get involved, they're usually difficult situations, difficult questions.
Right.
Where usually nobody's calling us to tell us they made their numbers for the quarter or budget's doing good. We don't get any of the great news. We're usually getting a call. It's like, hey, I'm nervous about this decision or something's gone wrong. And so can you help us walk through that? And you and I know some of those conversations are very difficult. There's tears, there's worry, there's keeping you up at night. And so to be able to work on something and discuss something that affects culture is very, very important to me. And so our firm is young. It's only a few years old. Almost all of our clients are faith-based nonprofits and churches, but we have a lot of fun with it. We have an incredible amount of joy with it. We really do believe that it's the way the Lord works in the world today is through these organizations and these people. And despite all of the challenges we see around us right now, we still believe the Lord is going to continue working through these organizations and these people. So our goal is to say, hey, how can we encourage the absolute best culture in all of this? And so, and like you mentioned about being an elder in this area and church, this is my daily life as well. I don't always get paid for it because it's volunteer work, but it's a daily question that comes up. Hey, what decision are we going to make today that affects the culture of this organization? And what we were surprised to find out is it's a lot more often than we think. We make a lot more decisions that affect culture than we realize. And it could just be how we're affecting somebody's attitude that is affecting the attitudes around them.
Right.
So I'm excited about this. This is going to be great.
Yeah. What I think for you, I think about, to your point, that a lot of times an attorney is brought in maybe on the back end or in response to something. And sort of the heart that kind of came out of our conversation was, man, wouldn't it be great to preemptively, proactively be able to talk about some things so that helps establish culture in a good way. I think about, I have a passion for culture, seeing culture done right. And let me just say, because what we talk about Between the Lanes covers a lot of different areas, right? We'll cover the family lane. We cover, the work and professional lane, talk about the church lane, the leadership lane, all these different lanes that we as people occupy and a lot of different hats that we wear. But I believe what's present in each one of those is culture. You have a culture in your home. You have a culture in your organization. You have a culture in your friend group. And so culture is, we live in a culture, we live in various subcultures, and what's preeminent among each of those cultures is trust. I'm usually in a culture with people that I trust, and I build trust, and nobody's perfect. And so there's times where that might get eroded. And so how do I build back trust? And so that's been sort of the source of our conversation. That's really elevated to the point of, so how does all of this impact our culture? So I just want to encourage you, whatever you are listening through a lens. Maybe you're an employee in an organization. Maybe you're running an organization. Maybe you're a church leader, and I want to encourage you to think about your culture today. We may be talking about through one or an angle of churches, but I want you to think about it through a broad lens of your culture in general. So I think about, as a leader, the responsibility a leader has in establishing culture, and sort of even the three of us sort of represent sort of three distinct different areas, right? If we just say, even as we kind of talked in our conversation, we're like, okay, so if I'm representing sort of through the executive leadership and represent kind of a leadership sort of executive view. Mike, you're kind of coming from environments, and John, you're coming from, we stayed with alliteration with all the E's, and we said employees, you know. So you got employees, you got environments, you got executive, but they all kind of work together. So let's begin to unpack those three different, we kind of drew it like a Venn diagram, that all three of those kind of circles come together in some part to play in what can establish culture. And in that culture, what it looks like to establish trust. So Mike, I want to ask you, because your company has done work with Barna, significant work. And I know you might have 20 pages of data today.
That's what I started with. I narrowed it down to 3, Todd. So
okay, perfect.
Yes, it's handy. I've got some highlights. I hope to at least touch on some of it.
Well, Mike, we're going to go right there. I want to give you, because I think that could tee us up for a lot of different ways we can go in conversation. Yep. So, I mean, the Barna Group, tremendous organization.
40 years of faith-based research, and we've been partnering them now for a number of years. We actually started with them back in, I think, 2013. We created Making Space for Millennials research program. Most recently, we finished Making Space, 3-set volume, Making Space for Community, Inspiration, and Formation. So it's been a long-time partnership, and we search for data because data speaks into what people are thinking and feeling about churches, which then ultimately helps us design different spaces, because to your point about culture, we really do believe that space is an opportunity to impact culture, which then ultimately has an opportunity to impact discipleship. But in the context of trust, so I was thinking through what would be relevant to say whether there's trust or there isn't trust in a congregant member and their relationship to the church. So this is from some Barna research that's been done. And it's very disheartening for me to share this information, but this is the reality. And I'd like for us to kick around and say, do we feel this? Do we see this? Because we're all church leaders in one way or another. But in 2000, practicing Christian U.S. adults made up of practicing Christians was 45%. In 2023, that dropped to 19%.
Wow.
Non-practicing Christians in 2000 was 35%, and 2023 was 43%. Non-Christians in 2000 was 20%, and in 2023%, it's gone up to 39%.
Wow.
When we ask people, what is your relationship with your church, and what do you feel about these certain things? 11% of U.S. adults feel in awe of their church. 20% feel valued at their church. 21% feel included. 22% feel at home, and 23% feel connected to others. If you look at it from the opposite side, that 77 to 89% of people do not feel these things at their church. And then when you look at the statistics as to practicing Christians and what's happening to them and how that's decreasing and the non-believers are increasing, something is obviously happening. And that's where our burden began. And we try to figure out, what can we do to change the culture to try to change some of this tide?
That's phenomenal. Why, to me, that's what's amazing about this, is you've got Barna doing this incredible research, understanding Christianity and where the church is today, and you've got them partnering with a construction company, a design build firm.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'll get the terminology right. A design build firm to do that. So what did that information lead your organization to do, or how do you consider all of that data?
Well, it's interesting. We're onto something. We'll see where this goes.
Okay.
Our president has a humongous passion for this, and as a result, the rest of us do as well. But we're after trying to determine what the new church architecture of our times is. The way we used to build churches over the last 30 years, it's changed. The way people deal with or approach their church experience, and the fact that millennials and Gen Zs are now the largest population and what they're looking for has changed. So all of this is shaping what we must do, and in our designs to go, what we've been doing isn't working anymore, and the data shows that. So part of that is what's coming out of a lot of this research is the fact that people are looking for transcendence, they're looking for spirituality. Even non-believers, when asked, when you look at a church building, what do you think happens inside of that church building? Non-believers, they say spirituality and transcendence. So how do you create spaces that somehow exhibit a form of spirituality that draws their soul and their spirit to want to engage with the Holy Spirit inside of that presence? So we're calling it the sacred shift to try to figure that out, where churches, for the most part, have been concerned about functionality. I have programming needs. I need to deliver ministry. I need X amount of seats. So that's what you look at that spectrum. We're finding what people are truly attracted to in the beauty and the creation of God, that there needs to be a beauty component within our church design. So that's what we're trying to explore with. And it's not one or the other, and it's not a sacrifice one to get a win-win. You don't give away or sacrifice something from each side, but you pursue the solution, the functionality, while you're pursuing the beauty inside of the space to hopefully create something that changes the dynamic of what happens inside those walls.
I think it's interesting that if you like the Gallup poll has the most trusted professions, right? And every year they have the most trusted professions. And there was a rise kind of with the moral majority in the 80s of pastors. They get almost to the very top. And then when you had Jimmy Swagger and Jimmy Baker, kind of the late 80s, early 90s, it started to plummet, and it's continued to go down. And you've had little bumps here, but it's continued to dramatically go down to numbers of, kind of used car salesman, politician levels, that of the pastor. And so when you were talking about trust, we're moving away from, it sounds like we're moving away from buildings that are saying, hey, the entire point of this building is for there to be a stage for someone to stand on. And now we're saying, hey, there needs to be more to this building, so that we look at it, we're inspired elsewhere, not just from a sermon.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that
exactly right.
What sort of began to be the trend with sort of maybe moving away from denominational sort of places. Churches almost turned into event style spaces, and it feels like there was a point at which I think when a non-believer would maybe look towards a church, when they saw a steeple or a cross, that might have spoken negatively to them.
Right.
And so there was a shift away from, hey, we want to be attractional. So the design moved to that. Then you get back, time goes on, and you have people going, I want to connect to something deeper than an event space.
That's right.
And that my connectivity to the Lord is not about the space, but it can surely create an experience that in my flesh I connect to. Meaning, I want to get in. I think about when in Samuel, when it says, man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. And we all love God looks at the heart. Thank you, Lord, that you look at my heart. But man does look at the outward appearance. And so there's a part of looking at the outward appearance when a person is looking at the church, that there was a pendulum swing away from more traditional church look. And I almost wonder if today, you mentioned like the sacredness, there's a shift a little bit back to, I want to connect with something deeper.
That's right.
And it's not about the space, but the space can surely communicate something. And is that what you guys are finding?
Absolutely. When there was a question we asked, what is it that you look for in your church space? So sometimes the best thing to do is just ask directly.
Yeah.
If you wanted to go to the church and what experience are you seeking? What would you like to have happen? And it was very surprising, at least for me, to see this. And seeing this data and this research is consistently changing, and it's evolving me in what I thought was a beautiful church building. And what I've come to realize is for a number of years, and it may or may not have been when you and I used to work together. I cannot confirm nor deny this, but we were building beautiful buildings. There's no doubt about that. But the question is, were we building beautiful churches? And that is what's beginning to evolve in me. So when we ask what are churches for, this is asking you as adults, top three answers were, number one, 40% of the respondents said providing a place for prayer, meditation, or reflection. It's very different than what we've created when you walk into a space and the first thing you see is an 86-inch monitor that's telling you all of the events that are coming up in the course of the week.
Right.
Just like you said. And then the wayfinding, and it's drop your kids off over there, go over here, move in. And you walk into the space of the sanctuary. And some of the guests on our podcast, we have a Making Space podcast, one of them brought up, what happens if nobody actually walks up on the platform in the space you've designed and created and doesn't give you instruction, doesn't say, all right, let's stand, and all of a sudden the lights come on, the fog machine comes on. If nobody's doing those things, what would you end up doing in that space? Is it inspiring you to do anything, or would you simply sit there and look around and wait for something to happen? And I started to look through our buildings through that lens, and that's exactly what we're finding in a lot of our church designs. When I say ours, just in general over the past 30 years, is we just lack a level of inspiration. We lack a level of spirituality that is usually tied to peace and calm.
Yeah.
And yet, one of the largest budgets that we have in our church projects is the AVL budget. and we're running cables and speakers and screens to every portion of the building that we can.
Yeah.
And we're not saying that that is a bad thing. There's a place for that, and it works. But there needs to also be intentionality by providing spaces that allow people to come. The number one thing they're asking for is a place to come, pray, meditate, and reflect. And do we have enough of those spaces inside of our church buildings?
Yep. That's a great, probably not. And when I think about people wanting to connect with the Lord, the church represents an opportunity to do that. So John, let me ask you from a standpoint of building culture, and you think about what all that might look like from a legal standpoint, or just procedural. Let me back out from legal,
Sure,
and just call it procedural processes, systems. What are some of the things that you're seeing either as trends or things that you go, this could help make the process of either trust or the culture in an organization better?
Yeah. A lot of people, when they look at a church and they think about culture, they think about the members and do they have a lot of cell groups or community groups? What's the culture there? But culture starts with the employees. It starts with the staff. It starts with the pastors and the ministers. And this is true in a lot of organizations. You're seeing a lot of leadership books. Hey, if you focus on your employees, the customers will be taken care of. If you focus on your staff, then marketing will take care of itself.
Yep.
It's the same thing for a church. And so what we're really encouraging our clients to do, and what we're seeing, is that if the employees become an afterthought and you're all just worried about the members, maybe even from a negative standpoint, maybe you think your members are all of the liability, that it comes from slip and falls and what happens if a kid gets hurt and all that, instead of worrying about your staff, then you're going to end up having a lot of liability for your staff. The same is true with the positive. If you're just worried about your members, making sure they have programs to go to and making sure they have counseling and everything, and your staff is drying on the vine, then you're going to have problems throughout the organization. And so what we've really tried to focus on is all those little tax nuances and things that aren't very fun to talk about, but how do we get our staff all those benefits they need? The sabbaticals, the counseling, the encouragement, the discipline if they need it, the coaching if they need it. How do we do it in a healthy environment? And I'm not one to say, I've kind of backed off vacation time. For a while we said vacation time kind of fixed everything. I just need more vacation time. And Adam Sandler did an SNL. I think it was Adam Sandler. He was doing this commercial on a trip to Italy, and he goes, just remember, if you're sad at home, you're going to be sad in Italy. And it's not it's not something that vacation or sabbaticals can fix all of the problems.
Right.
But there are other things that you can do to actually address the issues. And so what we've tried to do is get our clients to focus on their staff just as much or more as they're focusing on the congregation. Because if you have healthy ministers of the gospel working for you, then you're going to have a healthy congregation.
Right.
And that kind of gets lost in the programmatic side of things. And so I love what Mike's talking about the church, because it takes the focus off the program just a little bit more.
Yeah.
And we want to do the same thing. We want to take it off just a little. We're not saying it's not important. Sermons and teaching are important. Community groups are important. You have to have those. But if you can have these healthy groups. And the biggest way that we're encouraging folks to do that is to learn how to apologize. And there was a study that came out years ago, famous medical malpractice study, that basically said 40% of individuals said, hey, if my doctor apologizes, I don't feel the need to file a lawsuit. These are people who had the wrong arm chopped off. These are people who had terrible outcomes.
Yeah.
And if their doctor would sit down with them and say, man, I messed up and I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
They felt like saying, hey, I don't need to file a lawsuit. And what we're seeing in all of these employee lawsuits, my feelings were hurt. No one apologized. No one saw me. No one listened to me. Instead of being like, hey, this is a really difficult situation. I'm so sorry this happened.
Yeah.
But we're going to have to make some change. And I'm sorry. It's not fair.
Right.
And the reason people don't apologize is for fear. What if it's on record? What people say, oh, I said I was sorry. Well, that means it's all your fault.
Right.
You know, they're going to use that against me in a court of law.
Yep.
And so anyway, I know that's kind of off topic a little bit, but
I think it's actually very, very relevant, because I think, there's a dynamic of what we're talking about here, which from a leadership standpoint, and specifically we're talking about church, but if we're talking about faith leaders, ownership and accountability and forgiveness are key within all of that. And I'm thinking specifically about what we do at ELI. One of the things we talk about is order. Part of a key in leadership is you have to establish order. Well, much of what you're talking about is establishing order and systems and processes. And I think about, from an employee standpoint, one of the things that I desire in any organization that I'm a part of is I want whatever organization I work for or with to be able to operate under this mantra, to be an employer of choice. So built within being an employer of choice, that's such an overarching visionary kind of statement, but it means from a leadership standpoint, how we operate as leaders, to systems and benefits we put in place, to the overall culture, that when somebody has a choice between where I can work, I choose here, not just because of calling, but actually it's because of other practical things that make this a place that I'm not sacrificing all those things because of calling.
Right.
I'm here because of calling. And even if it weren't calling, I would choose to be here. And I think about the things that can erode trust from a leadership standpoint. Now, I was thinking there's probably more, but I listed these 4 things. Mistakes. This goes back to your point of apologies, or saying I'm sorry. That can erode trust. Missed expectations. If I say we're going to do something, we don't do it, I now don't trust that. Well, are you not going to do that next time? So now it's not a trust issue of that. It's just a trust of like, I don't know. Are you going to show up to a meeting on time? You set my expectation. The meeting starts at 10. You show up at 10:15 every day. I now don't know if I can trust you're going to be on time to meetings. Poor communication. Trust gets eroded whenever I don't know how to communicate, or I'm always finding things out third party, or I'm finding things out, through the informal mode of communication, the rumor mill grapevine, as opposed to, officially declaring it. And then fourth, trust gets eroded by incompetency. Now, each one of those things, when I think about trust, can all be remedied. They can all be fixed. 4 ways you fix it. You can fix mistakes by correcting the mistakes, making right whatever was made wrong. Whatever was wrong, you can correct mistakes. Trust can be fixed in missing expectations by clarifying expectations. Sometimes expectations are missed because they weren't clarified and people created their own expectations. And those expectations were missed because ultimately they weren't clarified. Right. So a clarifying and establishing of expectations is huge. Communication can be corrected by establishing good systems and processes for communicating clearly. Where are the modes and methods that I communicate? In other words, the mode I communicate in is this big group gathering, or I communicate via this communication tool. But whatever it is, I'm clearly communicating and setting that up. And then the fourth one, you correct incompetency by either making adjustments on the team, making clear what responsibilities and jobs are, and then leveling up incompetency. And sometimes that's the hardest thing to do on a team, because you might have deep relational connection. And over time, an organization grows or changes, and before you know it, an organization has outpassed its leaders,
That's right.
but they've been unwilling to make the change, and so now incompetency gets highlighted a little bit more, and you got to be willing to make the changes.
I see that as a significant factor that breaks down trust, especially within leadership down to the staff. And this is something that you probably deal with many, many times. But the reality is that when somebody's not performing adequately, and you're allowing that person to not perform adequately, you're impacting everybody else on the team.
Exactly.
I would often say, why risk the poor performance of one for the whole, for the morale of the whole?
Right.
And the thing is that the people in the office are not looking at that one person mad at them.
Right.
They're looking at the leader
Yep.
who's actually not addressing it.
Yes.
And they feel that you don't have the courage to address this to help the rest of us.
Exactly.
So we're actually upset at you.
Exactly.
And one time I was sitting around in a leadership group and I asked the question, how many of you have regretted letting somebody go too early? Everybody raised their hand. And how many of you regretted holding on to somebody? I'm sorry. How many of you regretted letting somebody? Nobody raised their hand. But when the inverse of that question was, how many have you regretted holding on to somebody too late? Of course, everybody.
Yeah.
And the reality is, and that comes from a good place. It comes from a good heart.
Right.
Yeah.
We want to help the person.
Right.
We want to help them succeed. We believe that they're going to make the turnaround. But as the time goes on and they're impacting everybody else, trust continues to be eroded.
Absolutely.
My law partner has a presentation she does, and I've done it a few times in her stead on discipline and restoration. And how do you know when it's time to discipline, how it's time to terminate, and when is it time to implement kind of a restoration plan?
Yeah.
And one of the things we talk about in that is that willingness to change your ways, your competence, looking for that defensiveness. If they're too defensive, then you know, hey, we're probably not going to be able to solve this.
Yep.
It's actually a trait I'm trying to teach my 12-year-old son.
That's what I was thinking
Because
about this
you're
challenge with
sitting
my
there
kids.
like, hey, you got to teach them not to be defensive. And I will say there are times, hopefully early in my career, hopefully not anytime recently, that I chose not to be defensive. And it was like, hey, I messed up and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And you know what? It probably saved my job.
Yeah.
Because the next lawyer wasn't. And he was like, I was right. No. And you know what? He lost his job.
Yeah.
And so that ability to not be defensive and to say, hey guys, we could have done this better.
Yep.
Here's what we're going to be doing. It's okay to say I messed up.
Yeah. And isn't, I mean, basically what you're saying is humility.
Yeah.
And humility goes such a long way.
It does.
Whether it's being willing to say I'm sorry, being willing to make a leadership change. Really, when it all comes back to a foundation of humility, you're really not going to go wrong.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So can I ask the two of you, kind of raise the conversation up a little bit higher? We started out by me expressing some things that we're seeing across the church and what's happening with some of the numbers as it relates to design. What are you guys seeing kind of collectively across the leadership spectrum of faith-based institutions and churches and even organizations? And from the legal standpoint, what is shifting in that area? What is that you're seeing that we are now potentially on a cultural shift from one area to another? Is something like that existing in your two spheres?
Well, I'll say from a leadership standpoint, and I think it's been shifting for a while, is a movement away from sort of the directive leader to more of a collaborative or consensus-based leader. And as I've watched and been a part of that transition happening, what is seen, and it's typical sort of generational or when those kind of things change, is sort of a not understanding each other. And what does that mean? What does that look like? And leadership looks like this. And a whole generation or a style of leadership that's very directive looks at a consensus leader and thinks, well, that's not really leadership. You're just kind of leading by committee, or you're letting other people determine. And what I've seen sort of society adapting to that is recognizing that's not the case. A consensus-based leader is not leading by committee. It's not letting other people direct and determine. It's just bringing more voices to the table. It's involving other people on the team to be able to give feedback and input that informs a decision more. And I don't know, I'm not saying that that's there's not directive leaders that are succeeding, doing well, and will continue to be into the future. But I think there has been an adapting to, from a leadership standpoint, to recognizing those type of collaborative leaders are rising to the top. And I think what people have seen, and there's been some negative examples of this. Sometimes directive-based leaders end up leaving a wake behind them regarding people.
Mm-hmm.
And there may have been a day when, and I mean, you can go way back decades and decades when that's absolutely what happened. Whenever you had, I mean, that's what caused labor unions to have to get formed, because people just absolutely burned and churned through people. They didn't care about people. People were a means to the end. And that's because the directive leader was like, here's what we're going to do. And as that's adapted over time through a lot of different things, I think to a top level leadership, what has arose is a style that looks at the value of people and says they can help give direction to our organization, and we'll actually be better for it.
Yeah, that's really good. That's great. I think that we're seeing the use of outside voices in is really what helps establish trust. When you have kind of the holy huddle and everybody kind of gets together and we all listen to ourselves, it tends to result in groupthink, which from management 101 in college is bad, right? Groupthink is bad, but it's almost the biggest weakness for leadership in organizations because we just listen to ourselves. And I can't tell you how many decisions I've been a part of that all three of us agreed it was the greatest decision ever. And then you talk to one person on the outside and they're like, that's terrible decision.
That was terrible.
So getting that collaboration,
Right,
I think is healthy. I think it does instill a lot of trust.
Yeah. What about you? What are some things that you're seeing as changes?
You know, from the lawyer standpoint, I'm seeing people want to be less lawyerly, you know, in their documents and their policies. There was really a time, I would say probably about, 8 to 10 years ago, where we almost reached a peak of we want it locked down as much as possible. Whether it was churches or small organizations, employee handbooks that were hundreds of pages, bylaws that were 50 or 60 pages. I got a set of bylaws one time that was 97 pages long. And it as much as we love to think this makes us look smart or makes us look protected, it doesn't. It just handicaps us as leaders. And so does that mean that our bylaws should be one page? Does that mean our employee handbook should just be ideas written on a whiteboard? No, it doesn't. But there's a happy medium there. And so, I've spent a significant amount of time over the last year cutting down documents.
That's great.
And it's been great for organizations, even separation agreements where we used to have 10, 12, 20 page separation agreements. Now we're saying, hey, can we get this on 2 pages? What are we even doing here?
Right.
And what are we really, and it's causing, with everything in the environment with organizations and people wanting to be less legal and less threatening and less NDAs and all of that sort of thing. It's causing people to ask questions that honestly, as a lawyer, we haven't been asked in a long time. Hey, why is this in here? What does this protect us from?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it protects you if, this and this and this happens. Has that ever happened before?
Right.
Well, not in my career, but there is a case
We're
from
going to protect against
1987 that, and so it's causing us to think, and look, eventually the tide will turn and enough people will get sued and people will be like, oh, we got to have this stuff back in there. So what we're talking about is cultural, and there will be waves and there will be changes. But I think the things we're feeling now are the forefront of the upcoming culture for the next 20 years. I really do believe that.
Yeah. Do you feel like, so as you're saying that, what I'm hearing, and I think it's a leadership trend as well, is simplicity.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There's been so much complexity, whether it be in policies, procedures, all that, and even from a leadership standpoint, and what seems to be rising to the top is, how do we make this simpler? And I always believe that it doesn't mean that simplicity didn't require some element of complexity or complication to get to simplicity.
Right.
But when, you think about it, sometimes the best teachers are able to take this super complex problem or situation and articulate it in 2 sentences.
Yeah.
That didn't mean it wasn't hard or complex. It just meant they understood it well enough to make it simple.
And I think the lawyer version of that is there's risk in simplicity. Right? I can better protect you with a 20-page agreement than I can a 2-page agreement.
Yeah.
But if the person won't sign the agreement, if it's 20 pages, then I got you nothing. And so you have to evaluate what's our risk, what's our reward, and what's our culture going to be? Does
Yeah.
everybody know that if you go work for that organization, you're going to be lawyered to death? It's going to impact culture. There's
Right.
going to be no trust,
Yep.
and it's going to impact how people leave.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. Well, we're kind of at the end of our time, and like I knew it would happen, kind of flies by. Is there any point that either of you guys wanted to touch on that you'd go, I want to make this point about this that we didn't hit on? The kind of closing remarks or final comments?
Perfection is a wonderful goal, but it can never be attained. So shoot for excellence over perfection. And that's what I tell my clients all the time when we're trying to create a document, an agreement. Let's make it excellent. Let's hit the major points, but you'll never be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in this culture stuff, man, shoot for excellence, not perfection.
Yeah. It's great.
My last thoughts would be, Todd, I think it's important to listen to those that you're trying to serve. Too many times we sit in rooms as leaders and we try to come up with the solutions for what our congregations may need or for what our teams may need that we're leading. And sometimes the reality is we just need to go and ask. And when we ask, we actually find out what it is that we need to change, and then having the courage to make those necessary changes.
Yeah, that's great. Mike, and then John, give away that if people want to contact Aspen Group or you, what's the best way to do that?
AspenGroup.com would be the easiest way to do it. We have a connect page there. If you'd like to reach out to me directly, it's M. Foltynski, very simple last name, Foltynski at AspenGroup.com. But our landing page and our connect page at AspenGroup.com would be the best way. They can also get connected to our Making Space journals there and the Making Space podcast.
Awesome. Great. John?
And on our website, it's thenonprofitteam.com, thenonprofitteam.com. There's a contact button. You can do it there. My email is simple as well, janthony@thenonprofitteam.com. So
awesome. Well, I know this had a different flavor in terms of our Between the Lanes topics and what we talk about, but I hope you got a picture of it. And I will say from an ELI standpoint, this is definitely getting into some of the things that we talk about. And like I mentioned, one of the things we talk about is about order, and there's a ton that is built into what does order mean and what does it look like. And so if we can help you as a leader grow, again, visit us at executiveleaders.com. A number of different programs that we do, coaching and consulting is a part of that. We'd love to help in any way. So listen, let me pray for you, and we'll close out and be done.
Thank you, Lord.
God, thank you that you lead us into all truth. And God, I pray that out of our conversation today, that people would be inspired or encouraged either by something that we said, that just by your Spirit, an impression came to them of something they need to work on or think about or adjust, or even in their own walk, how do they build trust among their team or their organization? And so thanks for this conversation. And I just pray for everybody watching or listening, you'd bless them and just deposit something in them today from our conversation that helps them grow as a leader. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
God bless you. See you next time.